We have come to the last session of the before lunch. We will have a small presentation by Rahul Majumdar, Senior Economist at Exim Bank. Mr. Majumdar is an economist and policymaker who serves as a Deputy General Manager of Research and Analysis Group of Exim Bank. He has over 19 years of experience and writing various type of journals as well as books on experience in trade promotion, public policy and strategic planning. His expert insights guide critical decision making for a wide range of national and global stakeholders. As an introduction, Exim has a large research and analysis group which comes for publications at various regular intervals, and those publications are of course used by government, international media for policy making as well as taking directions and making amendments wherever required. We'll request Rahul to please take the stage and make the presentation, post which we will proceed for lunch. Post lunch, we have sessions on EPM by DGFT and of course a scheduled presentation and a research program on FTA by Mr. Mishra Ji. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am conscious that including me, I'm waiting for the lunch. So I'll try and complete my presentation as soon as possible. So here today, see, when we were a kid, we used to have all this physics, chemistry, and we used to have this entire set of hydrogen, helium, and lithium, and the periodic table that we used to study at some point of time. But in this particular presentation, it's a few concise one, and it's going to be only on exports that we are going to speak. Now, chemical industry is quite wide, and you all are experts in that, you are doing business in that. But my objective will be to identify few markets of few products, whether it be organic chemicals, inorganic, insecticides, pesticides, rodenticides, under harmonized codes that are there. I hope you will find this presentation useful as far as market identification is concerned. So here you will find that, of course, India is among the largest exporters in the chemical industry, but it is, of course, led by China. Now, in no way we cannot compare ourselves with China, neither will we ever be able to reach to China as where they are, with almost a 45% share in the overall sales, global sales that is there. But definitely the good news is that we are close to some of the other countries, some of the developed countries. Let's say South Korea, we're almost at par. Japan is something we can aspire for. And in fact, I personally feel we should aspire for Germany, which is more on specialty chemicals and otherwise. And that's a market that India should gradually aspire to grow towards it. This is the pure play productions and where do we stand. So you will find that as far as installed capacity and production is concerned, we have the capacity utilization has not been up to the mark. And there's a standard around 77, 78, 79% share of capacity utilization that we have been ringing around for the last 5 years. And that's where the headroom for growth is. While the production has increased is largely for the alkali chemicals and otherwise organic and inorganic. But here is something that we have to ponder over and how we can best increase our capacity utilization as far as possible. This is the large market that we have. On the left-hand side is mostly the production output and right-hand side are the exports. There's a gap of around a year or two, but you'll still find that it's largely concentrated in Gujarat and Maharashtra that we have. Surprisingly, in Odisha, a small eastern state over there, is also doing pretty well today as far as exports are concerned. And that's something that we can obviously look into as we grow. In fact, you will find inorganic chemicals have a big play in Odisha is concerned. Now you'll find that exports and imports and where do we stand? Which are the markets? On the right hand side, you see the inorganic chemical that is harmonized scores of 28. I'm taking 2-digit code, not got into too much of details. The largest market, of course, is USA, Oman, UAE, Russia, and China. Of these two, you will find US is, of course, going to a tariff, and we have issues that we all are aware of. Organic chemicals, again, it's US. We need to divert away. There are slides in the later part of it where you will see what's the market that we can look at. Tanning and dyeing and insecticides are very small component, but organic and inorganic, you can see how it is placed. So even for that matter, you will find organic is the largest part of it, but you will find in later slide, there's a trade deficit that we is concerned with inorganic chemicals. So we are quite dependent on imports of inorganic chemicals from the global market, largely China. And here I come for the import market, which I was speaking about. So here you find that almost 4 billion of exports were there for inorganic, whereas almost 14 to 15 billion imports are there. So there is almost a $10 billion trade deficit that we incur on a year-on-year basis as far as inorganic chemical is there. And the dependency is largely, again, on places like UAE and Japan. These are the places from where we are actually getting into it. This is an interesting slide, but then most of you might be aware that which are the prime markets for clusters that we have already developed. These clusters are naturally developed over a period of time and not much that we can do about it. But at the same time, what we actually can do is that we can develop into further, like something that we can learn from the likes of China and Germany, where this cluster growth is quite significant. And to develop those clusters is something that the industry should closely look into and see how best they can attend the global demand that is there. The right-hand side, as I was mentioning, you see the inorganic chemicals largely from places like Odisha. Organic chemicals, of course, Bharuch is of course known for it, Ahmedabad, insecticides, Vishakhapatnam. So these are places that are already there. But interesting for me is something like Odisha, which is, and that too also inorganic chemicals where there is a trade deficit. Government of India, of course, in the recent union budget have been focusing on having a cluster-based approach that there's a plug and play model that they want to integrate. Coming to something which I was mentioning. So let's say the left-hand graph, left-hand side is the import growth that we can see. So these are the countries where actually the import growth is increasing over a period of last 3 to 4 years. What I'm trying to say, on the right-hand side extreme, you will find that the market for inorganic, organic, and of course the other slides also there. So these are the market that we are actually catering to. India is catering to. But while we are catering to these 5 markets on the right-hand side, there's an import growth that is happening somewhere else in the world. And this is something that we are missing apart. So you see on the right-hand side, we are going into US despite the tariffs being a big issue for almost last 12 months. But the import market growth you see are the countries nearby. Is not far away from us. Indonesia, Vietnam, just close by. These are the high import growth market, and that is something they are missing out. Similarly, you find for organic chemicals as well. We are going to US again, China, Netherlands, but then nearby Italy, Belgium are the countries where the import growth is significant, and Indian companies should increasingly look at these markets. The other 2 components, of course, it's quite small in volume, almost around $3 to $4 billion. We are exporting to these markets on the right-hand side, but the import growth is somewhere else. So it's not that you stop exporting, or Indian companies which are exporting to those regular markets, they should stop, but they should also diversify gradually to other import good markets which are showing good growth. I'll take the previous slide also. So this slide is important because these are the 2 key import that we do, almost close to around $25 billion of exports that we do. This has been spoken a lot in the first segment when DGFT, additional DGFT was speaking. So India, you will be surprised to know, globally today when we speak about free trade agreement, in fact, India's was one of the first in the world to have a free trade agreement, that is a SAFTA, South Asian Free Trade Agreement, which was a non-starter. Because of a geopolitical situation, it never started, never did well. Later, early in 2010, we did FTAs with Japan, South Korea, in fact ASEAN, the neighboring 10 countries. But somewhere down the line, our trade deficit increased, we didn't benefit much. India stopped doing free trade agreements. In fact, the current dispensation also was not in favor of doing free trade agreements at the beginning of their first 2 years. But eventually post 2020, India started looking at these free trade agreements where they can actually again go back and revisit. And this was largely because of supply chain issues that we suffered during the free trade agreement, during the COVID period. Today you will find this free trade agreement of EU, UK and the 4 small countries in Europe, and Australia has been signed. These are quite a big market for Indian chemical industries. And when I say, I speak about the four segments: organic, inorganic, insecticides, and rodenticides, and tannins and dye extracts. On the right-hand side, you see, if I say today the EU, India has signed an FTA with the European Union, and you see that the major exporters today, as is around $6.7 billion we export chemicals. But the market over there is almost 307. So almost a $300 billion is awaiting to be explored by Indian chemical industry. And likewise for UK, there's a $13 billion trade deficit, rather an untapped demand is there. Similarly for Australia, it's a small amount of 5 to 6, and of course very far away. But definitely EU and UK are the places which almost around 313 to 314 billion dollar market is awaiting for Indian chemical industry to be explored. And it is important that we benefit from the free trade agreements that the government of India has signed in the last 4 to 5 years. This slide is somewhere down the line we mentioned about how we are linked to the global value chain. Now, in a global value chain, you see almost around 24 years back, I'm taking a larger script, early part of the century when we started, India's share in the global value chain as far as chemical forward linkages that we are saying is almost for around 60, 59.4. Today it has dipped to 40.6, almost a 15 percentage decline in the forward linkages of global value chain. And that's where again we need to see whether, though we are exporting or engaging with the global market or not. And in fact not, it's not so. China has consistently been around 65, but India has dipped by 15%. Of course, the reasons, maybe multiple reasons are there. One of the major reasons, which again was mentioned in one of the first sessions, was R&D. India does not invest much in R&D as much as any other country would be doing it. This is something that I mentioned, and the installed capacity, the deficit is largely there. On the right-hand side, you see, you will have almost the dyes and pigments are the largest segments where the capacity utilization is the headroom is quite big. Alkali is 18, inorganic is 72. So you definitely just minus it with 100 and see how much still remains to be tapped. This is the last slide, and since I mentioned about free trade agreements and India need to look into these markets, but it's also important to see whether our products are acceptable. When the government of India, for that matter, when we say that 98% of our products have been open to the market, we can go overseas, they open the market, but they don't tell us that whether your product is going to be accepted overseas or not. So essentially you might be producing something. You say that the tariffs is 0% or close to 0%, it has reduced significantly. But my product is getting accepted overseas? Whether sustainability issues are there. For example, almost around 10 to 12 years back, you had the REACH, the Registration for Evaluation and Compliance and Harmonization. Now REACH, at that point of time, was the companies, Indian companies gradually developed themselves and make them compliant with REACH and started exporting to the market. Today we have something called the CBAM, Carbon-Based Adjustment Mechanism. And European Union, which is the second largest market for us, is getting stringent and stringent day by day. So even if India might be signing an FTA with European Union and saying that your products are easily acceptable, but when it's going to export it, they're going to go into details and see the nitty-gritties of what the production, how the production was for the chemical industries. So it becomes important that as we produce, we not only produce for India, we produce for the global. And that's how Indian chemical industries can actually go and reduce the trade deficit of around let's say around 14 to 15 billion dollar trade deficit that we have today. Lastly, to sum up, so my objective was 5-pronged. Firstly, I wanted to mention about the enhancing the capacity utilization that you have. So we are having a capacity utilization that is deficit. Secondly, the trade deficit that is there of largely for inorganic chemicals. Thirdly, developing a cluster and develop the cluster in a global way so that it gets acceptable overseas, so your products get exported overseas. High import dependency is there, reduce it, and largely benefit from the free trade agreements that we have today. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for hearing.
Thank you, Rahul.